Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is Cameron Bell. I am your host for Extra this week as a season opener, and I hope you're all feeling as excited as I am. And if you're not, then it'll be my job to be able to try and get you there. And joining me on said task is the boss himself, David Edgar. Davie, thank you so much for coming along to the opening of season 2024-25 here in Heart and Hand.
Hi, Cammy. Yes, it's rolled around again after a summer of discontent. I think it would be fair to say, with a lot of us, and I include myself in that, feeling slightly uneasy about what the future holds. But it's time. You don't get to go when you feel you're totally ready. You get to go when the fixtures come round, and that's where we are today.
When genuinely do you think the last time was Rangers fans said to themselves, "We are ready for this season. We don't need any more transfers. We're good to go." It always just feels like, we need to do more business, or we've not
Every
done it
club
quick enough. Exactly,
feels like that.
exactly.
No, but I will say that this has been different. I do agree with that, incidentally, right? And as a fan, I'm always wanting one more player that could make a difference. But I think this summer, Rangers' poor recruitment for a number of years, we've eventually run out of road on it, Cammy, with the squad that just was not capable of doing what we needed to do, and it was not capable, incidentally, of even justifying the wages that were being paid to it. And Rangers had got to, if you like, a year zero point, and I think that that's where we are. And I think it was a realization of supporters about just how much work needed done. It would have been great if we could have got it all done in one window, but I don't think that was possible. I don't think it's a one window turnaround. Also, when you add in, if you like, that almost earlier deadline for us, which is the start of the season in the European games, when the window still has another month, that adds another complication to it. I still expect a fair bit of movement in and out of Rangers before the end of the window, but clearly that won't be done for the first game. When I'm in charge of the world, the transfer window will be 2 weeks in June, and you need
And
to do all your
that's it.
business. And if you don't do it, tough titty, and then everybody can come back and get on with it. But football doesn't do that, and yeah, it leads to this situation where there are players who are going to be in the squad, I think, who are not going to be here at the start of September. And then there will be players coming in and trying to get the fitness up. But you've got to start a big transformation somewhere, and Rangers are in need of a big transformation.
Yeah, that's fair. Before we come on to the squad, David, obviously the slightly bigger news, which has been I suppose, like you say, a kind of a little bit of a cloud over the beginning of the season, is that we will be kicking off this season not at Ibrox. We'll obviously be at Hampden for certainly across August and September, potentially a wee bit after that as well, depending how things go. Um, there's no point dancing around it. It's been pretty shambolic. Rangers have obviously been in a recovery position to be able to try and get the project back on track and get it up to speed. Relocating to Hampden obviously took some deliberation, because there was potentially a couple of options that we had considered. Hampden was eventually chosen. It's not ideal. It's going to feel pretty weird. I'll be honest with you. I know you were at it as well, but it felt weird to me sitting in Murrayfield against the man against Man United in that friendly. Hampden, I think, will certainly feel a little bit different as well, being there for a league fixture. Not ideal, but we're in this position now. We have to be able to try and not allow the impact of that to start off the league campaign uh, wherever possible, and taking away any of the negatives from it.
Yeah, this is a huge topic, and our subscribers on Patreon will have heard us talking about it all summer. But for those who listen to the free show only, I think, first of all, two things can be true at once. And one thing is, well, this is a situation, we just have to get on with it, right? That is true. That is 100% correct. But you're also still allowed to be angry at this situation. There is a lot of talk about things in terms of the relationship between the fans and the club, that sometimes it can feel like death by a thousand cuts. This isn't a cut. This isn't a nick. This isn't a shaving cut. This is a big fuck off blow to the back of the neck that's taken out a big gouge. It's massive. And I think that it has, of course, led to a great deal of frustration. It has exacerbated feelings that were already there for a large number of the support, it calls into question correctly the board's competence. And those are questions that deserve to be asked over and above ones we were asking already about squad build and managerial choices, all of that. This was huge. And this is a self-inflicted wound because it was Rangers who made this decision. There was no force to do it. And now it's this open-ended sore that we don't know exactly when it's going to be rectified for. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think, by the way, that Rangers fans will not turn up in huge numbers and get behind the team at Hampden. I know that they will. When Rangers fans are asked to put their shoulder to the wheel, we do it. So I've no issue with that there. But I do understand the anger. And it's not going to be something that goes away quickly. And that is something I think that the the board at Rangers have to acknowledge, understand that it's going to be something that's held against them. There's no quick way out of it for them either, Cammy. The only way that they can start to turn hearts and minds around a little bit is by winning things. So that's a long process. That isn't something you can do overnight. But it's been a bad one, and it has affected the mood. The mood, as I say, this summer hasn't been great in general. I think a large part of that is the mood you're in as a supporter as well. Just as an example, I did a show on Heart and Hand a couple of weeks ago, and I get messages after the show, emails and messages and stuff, and half of them were saying, that was way too upbeat. I can't believe you're not calling everything out. You're too positive. And half of them were saying, that was really negative, David. I was really depressed after listening to that. And I was like, well, it's the same content, right? And people are taking the diametrically opposed, the same words are reading it in different ways. But Rangers have to accept that they were the ones who caused this. They caused it by the players with the way they ended the season, just collapsing, and what promised to be a big season potentially ended up just being incredibly disappointing. And then they did it with Ibrox. It's their responsibility, and it's their job to pick everyone up, a support and a club. I accept that the old argument about the fans picking up the players at times in matches, and that's a different thing. That'll happen. Right now, it's the club who need to pick the fans up because it's the club's mistakes that have put the fans in this position. And I don't want to, in case anybody's thinking, oh, this is really negative and I was looking to be upbeat, I'll be upbeat later on in the show for things that I am optimistic about, but we can't ignore the fact that this has happened. This is poor. I mean, poor doesn't sum it up. Actually, it is a colossal screw up, and Rangers are now very, very much on the make it up to the support thing. They need to be better at pretty much everything, and there will be disappointments ahead this season. There's no doubt about it, and the club are going to have to ride this out and show overall progress is being made in a number of areas, one of which is the pitch, the most important one. But secondly, it's about ending this feeling that fans have got that I understand because I feel it too, which is, can you do anything right? And when fans are feeling like that, then everything that's negative gets magnified. But Rangers are the ones who've got themselves into this position. It's them who need to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the negative connotation, I think, it's tough, right? Because it's been realistic. The thing for me, I think, with Ibrox and why it feels different than any of the kind of other disappointments is purely just because of the connection that we have with that building, because it's our home, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
players will come and go, and you'll know yourself in terms of the Rangers fans that you speak to, and people you speak to regularly, and people that you speak to in the kind of world. But irrespective of that interaction, you always have that same connection, and it's our home. And so that feels on another level in terms of where we're at. And my hope is the club take the lessons from this. It won't be the last development that we'll do at Ibrox. And the most important thing, I think, now is just that the club take the responsibility now. And I think, it started to some very small degree with the chairman's statement coming out, being able to almost slightly do a mea culpa and say that, project is ongoing. We understand where the situation is. We understand the impact that it's had on fans. We need to be able to move on that. But I think you and I are on the same page in that aspect, that words alone won't do it. It has to be actions. And that is back to the board. That is back to that responsibility. We've got to be able to get a CEO in place. We've got to be able to try and make up ground that we've lost in terms of that, because At the moment, it feels not well run. So the board then can take on that responsibility to get it into better shape. And again, you, me, everyone listening to this, and fans around the world will be expecting the board to be able to do that. So they've got that responsibility. That's part of being the custodian of our football club. Let's move on to the park then, David. There has been some big changes. We'll do the incoming players if we can now. At time of recording, we haven't had the confirmation yet that Robin Proper has completely signed, although we expect that deal to be announced pretty imminently. I won't go through all of the players in turn. I'm just kind of keen to be able to try and get your thoughts in terms of the transitions that have happened so far with incoming players. We've obviously had the opportunity to see some of them in the flesh. I was at Murrayfield. You were obviously down in Birmingham as well. Anyone at the moment who you are really excited about in terms of their impact in the upcoming season that you've seen so far?
Uh, Not anyone especially new. I think Diamande has looked very good at times during pre-season. He wasn't good at all against Birmingham in the first half, but none of them were. They were really bad that night, although it was an experimental side. But I think that he has shown real glimpses of what he can do for us moving forward. I like him and Connor Barron together. I think that Barron brings an energy in there that I felt we've been lacking. A different type of player to Lundstrom, but I think that he has qualities that we need in there. I think we need more energy right through the spine of the team, to be honest, and I think he'll help provide that. And also, he does seem to dovetail pretty well with Diamande, which I like. There's a embryonic signs of a partnership there, which is good. Of the other players, I don't think we've seen enough of really yet. Jeffy's looked a couple of moments, not brilliant, but a couple of times where you've seen hopefully what he can produce going forward. Defensively, hasn't looked solid. I think Rangers defensively throughout pre-season have been pretty poor, in all honesty, and that understandably is why we're going for a new centre back there. And the type of centre back he is, where he's a leader, he's a communicator. That's what we need in there, especially with Connor Goldson departing. I'm looking forward to seeing Cherny, who I think is a player in a position that we've needed for a long, long time, which is that right wing position. So I'm hopeful he can come in and give us something in there as well. But yeah, so far I think that none of the new players have, with the exception, I would say, of Barron, as I say, who's come in and slotted in quite comfortably. I think it has looked like new guys are coming in and try to find their way into a team.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. For me, Connor Barron, I think, as you rightly say, has brought in some of that energy. The the recruitment process, I think, in certain areas of the team has been certainly geared towards younger players. Barron, obviously, is 21. Does have experience in Scotland, obviously, having come from Aberdeen, but there's a difference in terms of playing for Aberdeen in Scotland and playing for Rangers in Scotland, where pretty much you'll be playing against teams who will be thinking it's a cup final every time that they come up against you. What I think I like best about Barron, however, David, is he just doesn't look like as if he's going to have to take time to settle. I think that he's already come in. He knows that he can definitely contribute. He does look to be setting up a decent relationship with Diamande. Um, but the biggest compliment I can probably pay him is that he doesn't look like as if he's too timid and that he needs to find his feet. He's come into it straight away against Man United in particular. I thought he hunted down well. I thought he was getting into tackles. We obviously conceded against Man United and a mistake for Jeffy, but for me, what I enjoyed about Barron was right across to him, not taking the head off of him, but just trying to get him G'd up and all of that. He doesn't look like as if he's going to have to take too long to be able to settle in amongst his new teammates. Cherny, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. For me, we have tried to put, it's very much been a square peg in a round hole for the last number of seasons, and that kind of right-sided position. I'm personally excited about Nsiala. I think that there's a lot around him in terms of obviously the experience that he's had thus far. He was offered a contract extension at AC Milan. He turned that down. I think he'll come over here to play football, but he is very young. And given the fact that we're expecting to hear the proper deal is close to completion and announcement, it will be interesting as to how he slots in there. Because he, at 30 years old, obviously does come in with tons of experience. Obviously, captain material as he is at 20 at the moment. And that, I think, for me, would be interesting to see if perhaps those two were to feature, because I think that that puts the experience alongside the youth and being able just to give him a bit of kind of guidance. If you could get to the quality, I suppose, of what I'm saying here, of Davie Weir being able to try and talk players through games and being able to try and build them up through that, I think that we could take some real positives from that.
I don't see Nsiala featuring a lot in the first team early, to be honest. I think that he is seen as someone who will be around the first team squad. Don't get me wrong. He hasn't been brought in as a B team player. He's been brought in for the first team. But we saw him against Birmingham, and you can see the qualities he's got. He's terrific on the ball. He's quick. He looked a little lost at times. And again, I would take your point there about the experienced players around him weren't exactly uh, playing well that night in that first half either. And he came through it. He didn't panic or lose his head or go to bits, and that is useful. But I do think initially the it will be John Suter that starts in with Proper initially. So he's more of a long term one. As you know, the some of the guys that have been brought in, we mentioned him. Igamani, we've been told isn't ready and will be a while before he's ready, which seems a bit peculiar. Then that when money's limited, we decided to go and spend it on him. But fingers crossed, it turns out to be a good investment. Whereas I think the guys that they're looking at as first teamers are Jeff Day, Cortez, possibly Barron, and then the guys that are starting to come in now who have that bit more experience.
One of the players I do want to talk about, and we'll talk a little bit about this more after we talk about the confirmed departures, is James Tavernier. And I'm just kind of keen to get your thoughts, David, is if James Tavernier stays, do you see him retaining his role at right back rather than Dijon Sterling in there? Because my own thoughts are, when I've seen Sterling playing at right back, is I think he's more than capable. I think that the right back slot for me is a degree of a limitation for him, because I think he's more creative in midfield. But at this point in time, obviously, James Tavernier, there was a video released early on in Thursday morning of his build up to the season kicking off, etc. There were rumours that he was going to be moving. Just on that position at the moment, however, do we continue to stick with James Tavernier, or would you prefer to see Sterling in there? What's your thoughts?
See, this is the issue with a player who's been there for a number of years. It happens at other clubs, and it's how do you move someone who's been a constant first teamer, the captain, a big part of everything? How do you then move an aging player on? And I think that there was that bid from Trabzonspor. Rangers turned it down, but Trabzonspor were expected to come back in with another offer. They didn't, and something has stopped that along the line. I think James Tavernier should go. And I don't just think for us, incidentally, I think for his own good, because I think he's become an absolute emblem of the failure of the last few years at Rangers. And people have made up their minds. And it's not going to change. And unless he goes out and plays at a level he played at, a couple of years ago, which is very difficult as you're going over your physical peak, to replicate that, then people are going to criticise him pretty viciously if things go wrong. And that's not fair, and I wouldn't want to see his Rangers career end like that. I think it has almost, to me, felt like it's come to a natural end. Secondly, he's the highest earner at the club, so we can't afford to be paying someone the amount that we pay him to be a bit part player, to feature sometimes and then not others. And I don't think he'd want to. He's the type of guy that likes to play every week anyway. So I still think it's in everyone's interest. Rangers has for him to go, and Rangers to make a fresh start and move on to the next chapter. If he's still here, he'll feature. There's no doubt about that. He's a senior guy. His form in pre-season hasn't been good at all. There is the fact that he had that injury and he was a wee bit behind everyone else coming into it. But there's just no room for manoeuvre, is there, with Tav? If he starts the season slowly and doesn't perform well, people will be on at him. And even if he played well 10 games in a row and then had a stinker, that'll happen. And I just think everybody's got a sell-by date, Cammy. And I think that this is James Tavernier's time at Rangers. That's not to say he couldn't go to another club and do well. I think he would. But I just thought it was the right time for everyone to go. If he decides to stay, wants to stay, then Rangers will, as you say, need to look to get something out of him because we're paying him. So you need to find a spot for him. But I am comfortable with Dujon Sterling at left back. Right back. One of the reasons I am is that he is a solid defender. He doesn't get forward as much as Tav will. First of all, I think we need to move away from the over reliance on one player. Secondly, I think we need to move away from having a specific playmaker who's a right back. You've got the other two fullbacks on the left side are both attacking fullbacks. So I think having the more defensive one gives you a balance there. And I think that you can still have your attacking fullback there. But it'll be very interesting to see if he's still here at the end of the window, in which case the speculation will go and we can all start to just get back on with it. But there is always going to be now speculation around him. Once that sort of well breaks, it doesn't stop, and I think that's where we are. So yeah, I've made my feelings clear. I think it would be better for Rangers and for James Tavernier if he was to move on. But if he is still here, I would fully expect him to feature. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm in agreement with the fact that I think he should move on. It feels very much like when we renegotiated the deal for Alan McGregor to stay on another year, and it was a year too much. And McGregor himself said at the time he would only stay if he felt he could still perform at a certain level. He couldn't, and I think that probably aided his decision to go. And it almost feels like we're there with James Tavernier. The context is slightly different, obviously, because he's captain. I think you're right. I think if he's fit, then well, fit, and I'll use that term with inverted commas. Then I think he does play. However, I do think that we could help him because if he left tomorrow, for example, the manager would have to say there are now dependencies on everyone else to be able to provide his contributions. Now we can still do that even if James Tavernier's in the team, but we'll see a different James Tavernier because he, for me, doesn't have as much of the pace that he did have in terms of being able to get down that right hand side. He theoretically will have a a left-footed right winger in front of him, which does provide some degree of variation in terms of obviously what we can attack with going forward and crosses in, etc. Um, but there is still, and you said the term perfectly earlier on, there is an over reliance on James Tavernier to be able to contribute so much as he has done in previous years. He simply cannot keep doing that consistently, and he didn't do it last season. Um, Again, I think that if that's the case, and he does go by the end of the window, um, I think that we're going to have to go back in to be able to look at other right back options and potentially bring someone else in. Alec Ray made mention of that after the Birmingham game to say that we're going to have to look at what players are going to leave. Obviously, there was one eye on Connor Goldson, who has now left to go to Aris Limassol. Um, for me, I think that right back has to be another area to be able to come in. Sterling, will play there, and as far as I'm concerned, will play well because he's a good footballer. He's athletic, and he will not be bullied off the ball. But as for cover for the rest of that, I still think it leaves a gap.
Yeah, we would definitely need someone in to compete with them there. I just think that Rangers need to kind of move to a different way of playing slightly, which I think there has been a reliance on Tab. I actually think it's been unfair at times on him because I think other players in that team have just kind of had in the back of their mind, oh, he'll do something, and the responsibility, and they've passed on their responsibilities a wee bit too easy for me. And I think that we need to be looking at the attacking players and say, look, this is your job. This is why you're in this team. We want numbers, we want goals, we want assists. That's your key responsibility in the side. And we need to, I think, to move to that, to having a side that's a more complete attacking unit rather than the individual heroics of one guy coming from the right back area. So all of these are factors, but this is the situation we're in, a bit of a state of flux at the moment because, as you say, the transfer dealings aren't complete. The squad is going to change even over these next 3-4 weeks. We are going to be trying to change a tyre, Cammy, while we're still driving. That's effectively what's going to be happening for the first month or two of the season. So it's about getting through it with as minimal disruption as possible.
Another part of that as well, David, is we're going to talk about some of the other players who have left. I mentioned Connor Goldson and John Lundstrom, obviously part of the leadership group, and I'm going to be glad when we can stop saying that phrase. But that's obviously now pretty much been broken up as well. Goldson, that move, it felt to me like as if it was taking forever to get completed. It has obviously now been completed. Barisic and Lundstrom have obviously moved across to Trabzonspor as well. Sam Lammers has gone out the door. If you look at that on the face of it, and what we've been able to do in terms of that business, that to me felt a lot like what the Rangers fans wanted. When we got to the tail end of last season, we said these players have to kind of be moved on. We don't need them. Some of them have come to a natural end, Barisic and Lundstrom in particular. I'm very pleased that we managed to get the fee that we did for Connor Goldson. I think it was just under 2 million. And obviously the Sam Lammers deal went back and forth a little bit. Utrecht couldn't afford them to stay there, but his move to the Eredivisie did work well for them. Obviously, 20 have been able to come in and get the deal across the line. So the surgery that was needed in terms of those players that had to leave, has happened. We can't deny that. There still will be other movements as we've just discussed. The big impact here, I think, though, David, and you mentioned that a little bit earlier on with James Tavernier's wages, but we've got now some more breathing space, I think, in the overall wage bill, which was far, far too high in comparison to the trophies in the cabinet. But it now frees up some spare money, and I think that will give us some slightly more room in terms of any more of the players that we're looking to bring in across the course of certainly in the next few weeks.
Yeah, hopefully. I agree, incidentally, the wage bill is far too high, and it was something that needed cut. A lot of the players who have gone out have been on big wages, and obviously Campbell will be going as well. That's another one. Might not be the end of the players heading out the door. So there is that room. You need to reinvest it, but reinvest it well. This is one of the things about the last few seasons at Rangers. Rangers have spent money. They've just spent it badly. And all right, we would all like to see a bit more in fees, but the reality is that those days are gone. And I think that is something that will just become clearer and clearer, that Rangers aren't going to go out and spend 30, 40 million in the summer unless they get a much better functioning transfer model where they're bringing in that sort of money as well regularly. But Rangers have spent a lot of money on wages and have not had anywhere near the return for it. Part of that has been due to injuries, as we know. There's been a lot of money sitting in the stand throughout a season, and part of it has been guys who've come in on big money for us, comparably big money, haven't delivered. So we need to be getting, like any business, I suppose, better bang for your buck. You need to make sure that your outgoings are generating what you need them to do, and that hasn't been the case for us. So we have got to get better as a club at that. There are, as you say, some big wages off the books, but there are gaping holes in the squad that will need to be filled up, and that'll take spending and wages in there as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that will be interesting with that is what we could theoretically manufacture out of loan deals. Um, Being able to try and bring in some high quality. Now, I don't want to go down the Fabio Silva route again because it just absolutely did not work. But there is value to be had. I think that for me, the transfer market is now starting to unfreeze a little bit post Euros. And I think that you'll start to see some players potentially move. Some deals may not be able to be completed, but that could free up options for being able to bring a player up on loan, not with necessarily obligations to buy, but just being able to try and bring them up for the season. That could help us be able with bringing in some fresh bodies as well. So not necessarily, confirming the transfers and being able to actually take the player permanently, but it will be interesting to see what happens within the market and what options become available to us in that regard as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as you get closer to the window, players become available who previously haven't been because their club signed someone, etc. And guys suddenly come on the market that they're not going to play at their club. They maybe thought they were, and they've held on, and then they find out that they're definitely not. So they can go out and loan. Loans are a changing thing in football. Look, when I was younger and growing up, a loan was basically either you had an emergency, like you had four keepers that had all hurt themselves, so you brought someone in, or it was a younger player that, for a club our size, you sent out on loan to get experience. And still sometimes you'll see that when we bring in a loan, people say, "Oh, I'd rather we're developing our own youngsters than developing someone else's." That's not why he's here. A loan player is to come in and help us in a position we're short on to be better this season. That's why he's here. It's not about we don't give a toss if he develops. We want him to score loads of goals for us or play really well for us. Um, and when you don't have enough money to do the whole transformation that we need, you can fill up gaps in your squad through that. Also, you're going to see things like loan to buys becoming so much more prevalent in football now, Cammy, because of FFP, where although they're technically a loan, if it's a loan with an obligation to buy, that's just a deferred buy. Where you pay a loan fee, which actually goes towards it. So it's effectively you just start paying it off early. But loans with options to buy, all of these are going to become more and more common. You can't necessarily fill the side. You've got to get that balance. And the manager has spoken about this, about the short term things and the long term things. He says Rangers have done too many short term things in the past, and that's true. That's why the transfer, the whole model that they speak about, has ground to a complete halt, because Rangers have done too many short term things. But you do still need players who can come in and hit the ground running now, and that's proper. It fits into that category. Then you can get guys who you're saying we're going to develop them and they'll get better over the next 3 or 4 years. You do that as well. You need to have a right balance of that. So um, there will be guys who come in on loan, I don't doubt it, but you still also want to see permanent players coming in who aren't. There is a big gap between bringing in somebody who's 20, 21 and bringing in somebody who's 30. There is a whole big range of players in the middle of that you can bring in, who can theoretically just go straight into the side and start playing. And I think that we still need a few of those as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It'll obviously supplement the existing squad, but yeah, I do like the idea of being able to bring in players, and we could see some of that in terms of who we've been able to recruit already, develop across the next 3 or 4 years. We could execute that famous player trading model that we've not been fantastic at in terms of being able to bring players in, generate some great experience out of them, and then they kind of move on for a profit as well. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see with regards what the next few weeks will look like. However, we've got more pressing business, David, and that is the kick-off to season 24-25, and it starts at 12:30 on Saturday against Hearts at Tynecastle. There's no getting away from the fact that we've not had a fantastic pre-season, but I always treat them with a pinch of salt anyway. I would probably be sitting here saying the same thing if we'd had some fantastic performances in the pre-season, that you have to caveat that with, there is no real simulation for competitive football. Um, a tough trip, I think, through to Edinburgh on Saturday afternoon. However, I'm beginning to get more excited about it the more I feel that the season is kind of kicking off as well. And by the time that I get to Saturday morning, yeah, I think I'll be on tenterhooks to be able to see what this Rangers team can produce. Um, I am encouraged by, as I say, some of those players that have come in that we've spoken about already. Some of those players that we did see last season, but we've got a little bit more out of them in terms of the last few weeks as well. How are you feeling about Saturday afternoon? Are you excited? Are you getting there? Where are you at?
Yeah, probably a combo of all the excited, nervous, looking forward to concerns in certain areas, but still be glad to, because there's nothing like watching your team. We're looking forward to that, and we've missed it over the last couple of months. It's a tough place. Tynecastle, historically, we know that. Although a recent record against Hearts is overall very good. So I don't think we should be going into this match with any fear. Hearts have not had a great pre-season themselves in terms of results. So if we're going by that, it's fairly similar. For me, it's about the team going there, standing up to what will be early pressure. There's no doubt about that. From Hearts, they like to start quickly against us, try and get forward. You need to see that opening spell through and take command of the game from there on in, and then get into doing your own thing and playing your way. So look, we'll need to be on it. We'll need to put in a performance that is significantly better than what we've seen at the back so far, and that's the whole of the pre-season. Even in the last friendly in Germany, I thought Rangers actually played some really good attacking football, genuinely, and it wasn't just good individual moments, although there were those. It was also really cohesive. Rangers were moving the ball quickly, guys getting involved in moves, the fabled patterns of play. It was all the stuff you want to see. So I was genuinely really impressed with us going forward. At the back, though, we got done time after time with the simplest of things. And if you're going to defend like that, you're going to struggle. Because if you defend like that against Hearts, who have Lawrence Shankland up front and other capable players, they will score goals against you. That's the reality, and then you're going to give yourself a mountain. So we've got to be significantly tighter at the back, and the players whoever the back four are, have got to be, as I say, much more focused on their defensive duties, not making simple errors, not switching off, not careless, which some of the goals we've conceded in pre-season have been very much down to that. And then you want your midfield to try and get on the ball, get a grip of the game, and hopefully we'll see that good attacking continued. But yeah, I don't have any real doubts about this Rangers ability, this Rangers side ability to score goals. I do want to see a significantly better defensive performance from us.
Yeah, that's fair. However, just moving away from the defence, if I may, ever so slightly, um, one of the big highlights for me from the game across in Germany was, well, two things really, but the first one I want to comment on is seeing some great goals from Tom Lawrence. He seems to have been able to try and really step up his gear in an attacking play going forward. How much he will feature will be quite interesting. But more importantly than that, and a real positive takeaway from me against the game against Berlin was Cyril Dessers. Now, Cyril Dessers will always divide the Rangers support, David. There is obviously interest in him, and whether that comes to fruition and he leaves the club, I don't know. Danilo, for me, still recovering from injury, still
He's
having to get
miles
back to
off, I thought, yeah.
he needs to get back to match fitness, and he's not
Yeah.
there yet. So it's very, very likely that it will be Cyril Dessers leading the line against Tynecastle. But a couple of great goals, and actually a really strong performance against Berlin, I thought. So if he can take the positives from that, and he looks sharp, there's always going to be questions around his overall decision making. We know that, but I was really encouraged by what I saw from him watching that game against Berlin. He just looked at times just really, really strong and confident. And I suppose the way how the preseason fixtures fell, to have that performance as your final performance of preseason going into the kickoff of the new season, I don't think we could have asked for much more from him.
No, he was excellent against Union Berlin. The issue with Cyril Dessers is the previous week against Manchester United, he was hopeless. Couldn't control the ball, ran into blind alleys constantly. And that's always been the thing with Cyril Dessers. He can be brilliant and he can be awful sometimes in the same passage of play. He, the one thing you know about him is that you don't know what you're going to get from him. If Dessers is on it, we all know what he's capable of. If he's not on it, we all know the other way what he's capable of. And I think that's the thing. Rangers are maybe looking for somebody who's just a wee bit more consistent across. But even when he's not playing well, he's still capable of scoring goals. We know that about Cyril Dessers. I personally think that Rangers need somebody who's a better all-round player in there than Dessers, i.e. somebody who can hold the ball up a bit better, somebody who can press a bit better, somebody who's maybe a bit quicker. But while he's here, and while he is the guy in possession of the jersey, then yeah, we need him to be firing on Saturday. Because the thing about Dessers is, it's not by luck that he gets these chances, right? And I remember at the start of last season, we were talking about this, and the good chances seem to fall when he's playing, but when we put one of the other strikers in, we don't make those chances. And I'm like, well, that's not coincidence, you know. It's because his movement, his know-how in the box gets him into these positions to be on the end of things. It's just he can be inconsistent when finishing them. But yeah, if we get the Dessers we saw last Saturday against Hearts, then we're going to be in a good place. If we get the one we saw against Manchester United, then we're not. So that's the thing with Cyril Dessers, and he's 30 years old. That's who he is. It's not going to change.
No, it won't. But again, I think that you saw an improvement from Dessers across the course of the season, especially when Philippe Clement came in. I think you saw some more mobility from him. I thought that he did a lot of selfless work as well. He was closing down a lot more. He was far more agile in terms of the things that he could do. If we could just work on him been able to try and take chances at first opportunities, then that would be fantastic. Because actually, that's, as we all know, the part of his game that we would like to be able to try and see improve. But I echo what we've discussed already in terms of the manager needs to be saying to the rest of the players, this isn't about one or two key players who have to be able to turn up and in some cases get us out of a hole. This is about everybody being able to contribute. And I absolutely understand the noise around us not being able to play at Ibrox for the first couple of months of the season. For me, I kind of need to put that to the back burner just now. It's about being able to start well, start positively. Um, we need to be able to look like we're going to be challenging for league this season, and that has to start from minute one. And I would hope that these players relish that opportunity. There's enough of them in that team who will feel, um, disappointed by the tail end of last season. Use that as the fire to be able to get them G'd up for starting the campaign properly. And for those new players coming into the team, it's about being able to try and see exactly what this means to us. This is why you've come to a club of such high standards, is to win things, and this is the first step in the marathon.
Yeah, that's why they came here. They came here to win things. And as you say, I mean, for me, I think in the early start of the season, with, I mentioned earlier, everything that's going on, a state of flux, the transfers, the pitch, or rather the stadium. For me, it's game by game. And, if we could get off to a good start, get a win on Saturday, brilliant. Then we've got a couple of home, in inverted commas, games to come. So you go, right, okay, brilliant. And you get yourself into a decent position that way before we go to Parkhead. So, yeah, you focus entirely on Saturday. That is all that matters right now. Once you've overcome that hurdle, then we can start looking ahead to the next one. And, yeah, I think that this is a season that we'll need to break down into chunks. The first natural break in it is the September international break. So we look at the chunk of games that we've got ahead of us now. If we can start with a win at Tynecastle, then everything will elevate, the mood, the squad, everything, and players start, continue rather to come in. Then everything can start to flow. As we know from last year against Kilmarnock, you start badly, then that mood can fester. So it is in the players' hands. There's nothing that we can do. The fans that are going to be at the game will sing their heart out and get behind them. But it's down to the players to go out there and put in a performance. And if they put in a performance they're capable of, they will win that match. It's that simple.
Yep, absolutely. So it's over to them. David, I won't touch too much on the Champions League qualifiers because you'll obviously cover that on Flagship on Monday. But just very briefly, I think it's going to be a tough one. Kiev,
Yeah.
I think rightly coming into it with a degree of confidence, I should say, with I think an overall aggregate score against Partizan Belgrade of 9-2. I think it finished up on the doors.
Yeah.
It's going to be a
Tight
tough
one.
game,
Tight
and
one, eh?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, clearly, it's obviously going to be a tough one, and away from home first, obviously, and then we're back to Hampden for the return leg. That will be a tough one, and we're just going to have to be able to try and put as much effort as we possibly can into that to give us a good opportunity when we bring them back to Glasgow.
That's it. Yep. Stay in it tight. Make sure that it's still alive for the second leg. That's the key aim of any first leg, really. So nothing changes there. They're a right good side. The 9 goals in 2 matches at that level against anyone is impressive, particularly aside from Belgrade. So nobody's going to be taking them lightly. I think that's for sure. But as you said, I'll worry. I'll start worrying about that one on Sunday. Right now, it's all roads lead to Tynecastle.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I get your final thoughts, David, just some very quick housekeeping from myself. I'm very pleased to tell you folks that we have continued on our partnership with NordVPN. And as a heart and hand listener, you're going to have a fantastic opportunity to take up some of their discounts on their various different VPN plans. If you'd like to head on over to nordvpn.com/heart and hand. That link will give you an extra 4 months on a 2-year plan, and there's plenty of great features and benefits. So if you are looking to be able to try and take out a new VPN deal for a whole host of reasons as to whether or not it's looking to be able to access content in other regions, if you are out of your home region, you can connect onto another one to make sure that you don't miss any of your favorite content. And obviously, there is tons and tons in there about security and staying safe online. David, we have the privilege of playing at New Emerson House tomorrow. Really looking forward to our live show. We have very few tickets left remaining. So if anyone's at a loss and would like to get G'd up for the beginning of the season, why not come along and see you, I, Martin, Adam, and Andy. Probably wearing something atrocious, but don't let that put you off, folks. For some good laughs and banter, I think we'll get people G'd up for the season as well. We've got a fantastic interactive Q&A with Ross and James as well. These live shows are always great nights. As I say, it is a privilege for us to be able to talk to people on such a regular basis, but doing it in person as well, just a great laugh as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be my last for a wee while. So yeah, if folk are wanting to come along, this is definitely the time to do it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it as always. We've got a really good night planned, and as Cammy says, in case you're worrying, folks, we're not going to sit there for 2 hours whining and send you into the night thinking that everything's a blow. You'll leave there a lot happier than when you came in. I suppose that's a double-sided thing to say because the counter argument could be you'll leave there glad it's over. I don't mean that. I just mean we'll put you in a good mood and send you off to the game, and and come and see us. We'll have a chat, and I'll start you up for the weekend. Especially if you've not been quite feeling it this summer, but come along, we'll G you up. We'll at the opening bars a bat out of hell. We'll get your feet tapping.
100%. If you aren't already, then please head on over to patreon.com/heart and hand as we enter into our 8th season following the Bears. You'll be able to get tons and tons of daily content on there from the likes of David, myself, a whole host of brilliant podders, and a whole range of subjects, all Rangers related, and some great football ones in there as well. And we've also got other non-football related pods in there and a brilliant archive. So if you haven't joined, head on over to sign up. Thank you to our executive producers, Mike Lee and Paul Miles, but most importantly, thank you to my guest for this week. David, a pleasure having you on. Some great discussion, and I am feeling definitely a lot more confident now being able to get into Saturday, so thank you so much.
No bother, mate, and come on, Gels. Put us in a good mood Saturday night.
Exactly. David, we'll be back with you on Flagship, unpacking the game against Hearts at Tynecastle on Saturday. That'll be with you on Monday evening, and looking forward to the Kiev game on Tuesday night as well. Until then, folks, thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back with you soon. Bye-bye.